So today, we're gonna do Andrew Wiggins for our player profile. Um, Starting small forward, obviously acquired him via trade a couple of years ago, in 2021 for D'Angelo Russell. Obviously NBA champion, a guy that showed out in the NBA Finals. Last season, obviously he had a personal matter that kept him out around 45 games, and he ended up actually playing decent in the playoffs, all things considered. So we're going to kind of look forward to what he can do next year for us and recap his strengths, weaknesses, and things like that. But without further ado, let's get right into Andrew Christian Wiggins. So last season, as I mentioned, 37 games played, a touch over 17 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists on 47 from the field, about 40% from three, just a touch under, and 61% at the line. And then in the playoffs, he played about 2 more minutes overall on average. So in the regular season, he played around 32 minutes per game. In the playoffs, about 34 minutes per game. And even though his production went down scoring-wise, it's still around 17. His rebounds went up at around 5.5, and his assists remained around the same at around 2. But his efficiency did go down from the field and from the three-point line at 46 and 30%. 68% from the free throw line. But these raw numbers and these averages don't necessarily tell the full story of his impact defensively and in other facets of the game as well. Just being a guy that can be steady for us on a night-to-night basis and provide value as a rebounder, of course, and do the ancillary things to make Draymond's job easier, Clay's job easier, whether it be just as a floor spacer and a threat to shoot the ball, even if defenses don't respect him necessarily and kind of leave him open at times because that's the best option available, or defensively covering up for Clay's deficiencies at the point of attack spot. So he really provides a lot of relief for some of the core members of our team. And even though the numbers may not always reflect that because that's more intangible and role type of things, it should be acknowledged and understood that his value goes beyond the stat sheet. Just to start with his strengths, right? He is probably our best play finisher, I would say. Kuminga is obviously very good, but Wiggins has better timing and better understanding of the system, understands how to read the defense just given his experience in the league, and pick his spots more intentionally, more effectively overall. And he's a really good cutter, right? His finishing comes in the form of cutting to the basket, particularly ghost cuts and 45 cuts, similar to GP2, similar to Kuminga. Just in those actions where, on the weak side, if a team is overhelping, on the ball, he kind of is able to take advantage of those lanes and openings and be a presence in those spots. So he's really effective off the ball in those possessions, and that's something that, again, when you don't demand the basketball and you're still able to, and you still manage to be efficient in those possessions and in your spots, that is a huge positive for any team, right? Because the more effective you can be without the basketball, the more relief and possession-to-possession efficiency it provides for the team overall. So on top of that, obviously we've seen him used as a pick and roll man, right? Just rolling to the basket as a screener. We've seen him and Steph kind of run those actions a lot in 2022. Less so last year, but again, last season was a little bit uneven. Nothing about last season was stable. So I expect us to kind of get back to those sets that get Wiggins in downhill positions to thrive where he's, at his best as a force downhill. And then obviously in transition, we saw this a lot in the playoffs. Well, technically in 2022, but also even last year at times, just being a guy that, at 6'7", his frame, putting the ball on the floor, or just straight running with his great down-the-middle speed to the basket in transition, being a presence in that sense, just providing rim pressure and respect from the defense as a guy that can, be a threat in those spots. So his ability in transition really was amplified in that Boston series in the finals, but that's something also that is a result of stops, right? We need to get stops for Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga and GP2 and everybody else to be in transition and thrive in those situations. So we need to get back to being a defensive-minded team, and that'll help open up these strengths in transition that our players have. And then I think the most notable, outside of his finishing ability, the most notable strength of Andrew Wiggins is his elite point of attack defense, right? And I put him in that elite category because he is at the top of some of the select defenders on the perimeter, right? Just sliding his feet, understanding how to, position himself, sticking with the offensive player, getting a contest up to the release point, putting in that effort and that engaged, mentality of not letting up, right? And even though I felt like he took a little bit of a step back last season as a defender, he was still very good. And I will take stock more of his 2022 season than of last season, from a defensive assessment standpoint, right? I believe he is in the elite category of point of attack defenders in the NBA. He belongs in the conversations of guys like OG Anunoby. Obviously GP2 is in the mix. Guys that, are stoppers on the perimeter, and you can put them on anyone 1 through 3. So, obviously a lot of respect for the strides that he's taken in that particular department, because coming into the Warriors 3 years ago, he did not have this reputation, right? He really built himself up to this level as a defender, and we have to give him a lot of credit for that. And then obviously he's an improved rebounder, right? That was one of the big points of emphasis that for Andrew Wiggins coming in, on the team, and Steve kind of breaking down what he needs to do to be effective on the court in his minutes. And rebounding is one of these things, right? We saw in the Boston series as an offensive rebounder, like there were times that maybe he didn't didn't shoot the ball well offensively, but it didn't stop him from being effective as an offensive rebounder, providing us with second chance opportunities, really being active on the glass, putting a body, making a more conscious effort of just getting the ball and going after it, rather than sulking that, maybe he didn't get as many possessions as he felt he deserved offensively. So that's a big step that he's taken, just making that a more or prioritizing that aspect of his game, right? Just locking in to rebounding the basketball. And in the playoffs, the last 2 seasons for the Warriors, right? So in 2022 and 2023, he averages around 6.8 rebounds per game. So he's, a high-level rebounder in the playoffs. He takes a step when the lights shine brightest as a rebounder. So Andrew Wiggins, a lot of respect for him, just the improvements he's made over the course of his Warriors tenure. And rebounding is probably the most notable one, because it allows us for lineup versatility, being able to play multiple combinations, because he's so competent at that particular part of the game. And then, like I mentioned before, he moves well off the ball, and that's a really big deal, right? Somebody that can be efficient in his spots, be efficient with his opportunities, even though they may not be as many as we'd hope. Somebody that can take advantage of those possessions and be efficient in them consistently. So, and that's reflected in his catch and shoot threes. Over the course of the last 2 seasons, he shot 41.6% on catch and shoot threes. So that's a pretty significant mark on good volume. And that's something that, again, he's taken another step as just a shooter off the ball.
Trey,
Yeah.
I wanted to call that out specifically. I'm happy that you pointed that out because it is so significant. We're talking about a guy coming in from Minnesota the previous year who was shooting 33% on catch and shoot threes. And we can't just say that that's just an effect of being within our system. This guy has worked on his game. He has worked on his outside shot, and all the work that he put in has come into fruition. That's an absolutely insane jump when you look at that being an average from the 2021 season. It's truly remarkable. You rarely see that that quickly, that much of a jump in the NBA on a guy off ball. It's really something.
Did we lose Dre?
We might have lost Dre.
Oh no, yeah, I'm here. Um,
I thought it was only
yeah,
me.
I was
I
asking about
thought my audio cut out. I ain't gonna lie.
Gross.
yeah, you're good. So I said, basically, no, you make a really good point. Like he was historically a 33% 3-point shooter for his career, and that percentage is bumped up to 35% over the last few seasons. And in that small stretch of time, he's bumped it up a few percentage points, which is pretty significant. So yeah, absolutely, like that's a major, uh, that's a major improvement. Like, and not only for the Warriors, but just for himself, somebody that has worked on his game and understood what's required of him to be effective in our offense. So absolutely, like he is bordering on about 37, 38% for at the 3-point line for his Warriors career, which is extremely impressive for a guy that's never been thought of as like a 3-point shooter. So absolutely, like catch and shoot opportunities. Just defenses will kind of leave open and disrespect them a little bit, and that has to do with the fact that you have to command so much attention to Steph on and off the ball, and obviously Clay in the mix. So you can't really play off of them. So Wiggins' ability to make defenses pay consistently is remarkable, and again, that's he. It's a testament to his work ethic more than anything.
Hey Dre,
Yeah,
can you talk a little bit about Andrew Wiggins and what he did to Luka Doncic 2 years ago in the Western Conference Finals, and then what he
absolutely.
did to Jason Tatum? Because if I'm correct, both of those players were first team All NBA this year, right? And can you just kind of go through the effort of guarding Luka 94 feet for 5 games, and then the effort that he put in on Tatum? Can you just elaborate on that and on how key that was to us winning a championship?
100% I will. I love that you pointed that out. By the way, so Wiggins for his Warriors career shoots 38.6% from three. 38.6% for his Warriors career. That's an impressive mark.
Which of course includes, not only just catch and shoot, but also pull up threes, right? Which is why for anybody
Yeah,
just in terms of looking at like, okay, why is that lower than catch and shoot, right?
right. But Kevin makes an incredible point. So Wiggins' job in the playoffs really put an emphasis and amplified what he kind of was doing all regular season in 2022, in that 2022 playoff run, right? So he was a guy that you could stick on the opposing team's best perimeter player consistently, and he would do an incredibly impressive job on them, just sliding his feet, sticking at the point of attack, not dying on screens, really making that effort to get to that point, that release point from a contesting standpoint. And then you fast forward to the playoffs, right? We play the Nuggets in round one. Obviously, Wiggins was okay in that series, just providing some scoring and some rebounding, but defensively, he wasn't necessarily guarding a high-profile matchup. Now you move on to that Memphis series, and I have the numbers right here, actually. So against Memphis on Ja Morant shot 9 for 20 from the field, 45% on Andrew Wiggins, 3 for 8 from three. So that's 38%. Those are pretty good numbers for a guy that was, pretty dominant in the playoffs overall. Like Ja had some really explosive games, and he got loose a few times, and Wiggins did a really incredible job of containing him, even to his regular season averages, which is pretty notable. And
To
then
be
again,
to be fair on that, real quick, if I
yeah,
remember correctly, we were playing drop on Ja because we were afraid of him driving, so we were just leaving him wide open
and
at the
that's
3-point
true as
line.
well. And that's true as well. Like schematically, we were kind of encouraging Ja to be the primary offensive threat for the Grizzlies. We were trying to cut off the Desmond Baines and the Jaren Jacksons and the role players that they have to create that balance offensively. So you are right. Schematically, for the matchup, given the matchup possessions that Wiggins had on Ja, it was pretty impressive given kind of the coverages that we threw at him. Because we kind of encouraged him to be more of a scoring type of player to cut off the others. And then on Tyus Jones, right? Tyus Jones shot 5 for 12, 42% from the field, and 0 for 2 from 3. And I remember in that game 4, we were really struggling to score the ball. We had around 60 some odd points through 3 quarters. And that game 4 was one of the biggest games of the entire playoff run that we had, because that was a game that Memphis was up by as much as 12 in the fourth quarter. And Andrew Wiggins made the valiant effort to pick up Tyus Jones 94 feet, stick with him, contest his floaters, be a pest, wreak havoc. And he had a few big plays. You know, he had a steal in that fourth quarter that got us 2 points, 2 huge points to break the lead. He was really making Tyus Jones' job difficult, just hounding him, using his frame and his size, his 7-foot wingspan to make his life difficult, because Tyus is one of the best backup point guards and pick and roll partners or pick and roll ball handlers in the NBA. So for a guy that was as effective as he was, Andrew Wiggins completely shut that down when it mattered most. And then you move on to Luka Doncic, like you said. And Luka's percentages on Andrew were pretty decent. Like, he shot 48% from the field and 44% from 3. But I'm not looking at his percentages when you look at his assist to turnover ratio. See, while Luka was able to score on Wiggins pretty well, Wiggins still played good positional defense, getting contests up, making his life difficult, making those shot contests, tough. But at the end of the day, Luka's a great shot maker. So Luka got a bit loose from a shot making standpoint. But his assist to turnover ratio, Luka had 13 assists and 11 turnovers when Andrew Wiggins was guarding him. Now that's about a 1-to-1 ratio. To be exact, a 1.2-to-1 ratio. So for every 1.2 assists Luka was able to make, he also had a turnover as well. So that ratio right there is incredibly significant and a testament to Wiggins' ability to be a disruptor on the ball, just deflecting passes, being active, and really closing some space and the gap between Luka to make his life uncomfortable as a playmaker, right? Even though Luka was getting his scoring off, he completely shut off Luka's ability to play make. And then on the flip side, a guy like Jason Tatum. And it's funny because Jason Tatum actually kind of got off from a playmaking standpoint, right? He had 18 assists and 8 turnovers when Andrew Wiggins guarded him, which is actually a pretty respectable ratio. That's about 2.25 assists for every turnover. But the difference is with what Wiggins didn't necessarily do with Luka, Jason Tatum shot 38% from the field when guarded by Andrew Wiggins, and 43% from 3, which is still very good. But again, that 38% from the field was on 56 shot attempts over the course of a 6-game series. That is a incredibly significant mark. I mean, that is the Boston Celtics' best player, and he is shooting sub 40% on high volume.
Hey, Dre, just real quick on the Luka Doncic thing, because right. I missed it. I was looking up his numbers. Just for his career, Luka Doncic is averaging about 8 assists per game and about 4 turnovers per game. So that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So Wiggins was holding him to a 1-to-1. Like, yes. That is very significant. I mean, that is really significant, because
possessions are more valuable.
Exactly. If you're giving up a 2 or 3 point basket every 2 times to get 1 turnover, that adds up, right? So if you're stealing the ball or forcing a turnover and gaining a possession rather than giving up a 2 or a 3, that is so critical in the playoffs. So
and especially because these are the best players on the opposing team. Like, people got to remember, the matchup difficulty that Andrew Wiggins had to face was among the best that the NBA has seen. Like, this is the elite of the elite, right? Like, Luka Doncic, the leading player on and the shot creator on a Western Conference Finals team, right? Jason Tatum, the same position for a NBA Finals team. These are the cream of the crop offensively, and he completely shut them off one way or another, whether it was shooting the ball with Jason Tatum or playmaking, cutting that off with Luka. And then he did a very respectable job on Tyus and Ja as well. So absolutely, and we can kind of go to even Jaylen Brown, where Jaylen Brown shot 15% on Andrew Wiggins, 2 for 13 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. So he completely shut Jaylen Brown down. You go to a guy like Jaren Jackson. Now, Jaren Jackson is a power forward. We cannot forget this. Jaren Jackson is 6'10". Andrew Wiggins is 6'7". So Wiggins is giving up height and weight to a guy like Jackson. But Jaren Jackson only shot 46% on Wiggins, 6 for 13, and 1 for 3 from 3, which is 33%. So even in the few possessions he was guarding guys like Jaylen Brown, Jaren Jackson, he did a phenomenal job on them, given the circumstances, given the matchup difficulty.
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna touch on at least like of what makes Wiggins such a good defender. Because exactly as you said, right? Like the matchups you listed, they're all a variety of guys. They're not all the same skill set. They're not all the same body type. They don't attack the same way. And I think, it's crazy because Wiggins really does have like the whole package. The only thing you could say as far as defensively that he's a little bit lacking on is strength, but he really makes up for that with his length. Like one of the main things that you will see Wiggins always, whenever he's contesting shots, is his quick leaping ability along with his length. You will see him bother so many jump shots, so many mid-range jump shots, so many layups. We've seen him get a bunch of blocks too because of his quick leaping ability. And I think that is really what separates, Wiggins from other defenders, because other defenders, while they might have athleticism and strength or whatever, but his quick leaping ability is really it's essential for bothering jump shooters, which I think is one of the most important skill sets to have. And not only that, like as far as strength, like he's not the strongest, but he's actually gets low in terms of like his center of gravity.
Right.
And he doesn't get pushed around as much. So once they do get to the whatever spot that the offensive player is trying to get to, that's where that length and leaping ability comes in terms of making the shot difficult. So like, and obviously we know about his lateral ability, but even with that, I think once again, right, the length and the leaping ability really comes into play, because you'll see a lot of times Andrew Wiggins is almost, right behind the guy's hip, almost trailing. But as soon as they get that shot up, Andrew Wiggins will jump and contest the shot and bother that shot. So, I think those two attributes that Andrew Wiggins has, it's almost irreplicable around the league. And that's what makes him such a great defender, allowing him to guard, when somebody's either faster or stronger than him, because he utilizes those two skill sets very, very well.
100%. Yeah, his timing is impeccable on contests. His ability to move laterally and cut off driving lanes is a work of art, because at the end of the day, when you face a guy like Luka Doncic and you have to cut his greatest strength off, which is the ability to dribble, penetrate, and for kickouts, to make plays for others or to score, and you're able to kind of cut an entire aspect and facet of his game off, an entire component of how he approaches the game offensively. And then you look at a guy like Jason Tatum, where he may not be the playmaker Luka is, but he's probably a more shifty scorer in the mid-range and kind of can get to spots a little bit in a variety of ways. He is taller, right? Jason Tatum's a legit, 6'9", right? 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah.
So Wiggins is giving up a few inches there, but his ability to just contest, put a hand in his face, not give up much ground, and be just relentless from that standpoint, even with his maybe physical, what he's giving up physically is incredibly impressive, right? We've seen him guard LeBron in the play-in, and he completely shut him down. And LeBron is a guy, we know he's 6'8", 250, can get to the rim, can, play in the post. So Wiggins has just excelled.
And one thing I want to add about Wiggins is he's a playoff riser. That's an important thing. He's a very much so a playoff riser.
And not a playoff riser in the traditional sense. And that's a great point, B. It's like most people view being a playoff riser as like, oh, your percentages go up. But with Wiggins, it's his rebounding and defensive intensity that goes up.
The things that matter to winning.
Yes,
the effort,
exactly. Yeah. Yes. He's a playoff riser in more meaningful ways than we traditionally view that buzzword as. Exactly. And then I want to get into little X's and O's right? And I think, it's important to get a little nerdy on you guys a little bit because we do run some plays for him. And these plays are highly effective. And the reason they're effective are because he is uh, extremely capable of taking advantage of his frame and of the defense off the ball. Like I said, so in cross screen actions, we call this the head tap, where essentially the Warriors like to run an action where Steph may set a screen towards the baseline, or maybe another player of sorts, and Wiggins it's a cross screen where he kind of crosses through that free throw area to gain post positioning
You mean
for
from block to block, right?
block to block.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So that cross screen action you're basically mentioning is, the initiator will pass to the wing, and Steph will either be in the corner or low block, right? And the reason for the low block, Steph being on the low block, is because it gives you, a variety of options. One of them being that cross screen for Wiggins, which can, Wiggins will get it on the low block, and that can turn into a split action. The other option is, Steph on that low block. It can also turn into a down screen from, the big that's on the wing and pop up. So, yeah, one of the ways that, we do mix it up is, Steph Curry will be on that low block. Ideally, he gives a fake like he's going up, and then he'll go right across from the block and screen for Wiggins' man. And he'll get it roughly around, the block area. And from there, we usually go one of two, which is either let Wiggins attack the mismatch, or the other option is basically go into the split action.
So that's like one of the core, like that's one of the staples of our offense when we talk about setting up Wiggins post-ups. So what teams tend to do is they switch on that play, right? They'll switch a lot. And so what you'll find is that if Steph's the screener on that cross screen and Wiggins is kind of, he's coming through that and the defense switches, then now you have a guard on Andrew Wiggins. So if D'Angelo Russell is guarding Andrew Wiggins and you got D'Angelo Russell's guarding Steph, and then you got LeBron on Andrew Wiggins, and Steph sets that screen. The threat of Steph's ability to shoot kind of forces a switch, and now you have D'Lo on Wiggins, which he can take advantage of, right? And so this is kind of the foundational action to his that post up play, right? It can there's a bunch of counters and options out of it, but one of them is just taking advantage of a mismatch from a switch. And we've seen Wiggins be incredibly effective with those opportunities, right? Time and again, especially in the playoffs, right? If the offense is bogged down, you can kind of throw it down to him. And he's one of two players on our team that can truly attack a mismatch in that capacity. And then the other play that I kind of was able to pull out.
Just to add to that real quick, and I do, and I'm in 1,000% agreement with Shadow that we don't run that play enough for Wiggins.
We don't. If you look at his
Facts.
post, if you look at that play, if you look at his, if you're just not that play coming off that action, but his usage rate. If you look at like possessions per post up, like especially last season, only like 1.2, 1.3 possessions per game that are coming out, off of either that action or a different variation
the frequency
of that
it.
action. It's really limited.
And I think the main thing for me with that is I think we're limiting on our offense in terms of the like allowing Wiggins to do more, because I do think, right, that mismatch is efficient enough to the point where it can start generating double teams, but we didn't run it enough to give the defense that to worry about. So that is something that I wish Steve Kerr did more of, and I'm hoping that as Shadows mentioned, that Wiggins will be a bigger part of the offense. So I'm hoping this is one of the ways that they do incorporate that.
And Sun God is right. The numbers back that up. He's shooting over 50% on those types of possessions, right? So it's a small sample size with it, given that it's it's less than even 1.5 possessions per game, but the numbers back it up that it's effective.
Absolutely. And then the other play that I kind of was able to pull out was the back screen, which is usually used in inbound opportunities and those kind of situations. So basically, you set a back screen, and Wiggins kind of pops in for an easy layup where the defense tries to either switch and they fail, or there's a miscommunication, and he kind of just reigns free for an easy 2 points off the inbounds at the basket. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen them run that play for Clay, even other players at times. We actually ran it for, I think, Jordan for that game winner against Memphis, where he kind of just said there's a back screen and he got to the rim for that finish for a game winner. But Wiggins is exceptional at that particular play because he just pops free and gets an easy 2 points. He's 6'7", so it's very difficult to block him once he gains position and attempts a shot like that at the basket, right? You're going to need a guy like Jaren Jackson, Anthony Davis, or like a high-profile rim-protecting big to be able to recover on the advantage that Wiggins and the separation that Wiggins creates off of a play like that. And then I also mentioned shot creation capabilities, right? I'm not going to call him a shot creator per se because at the end of the day, we just don't see it enough on our team in this offense. So he is fully capable of creating his own shot. And we've seen it, multiple times where a play's bogged down or, the shot clock is winding down in a pinch and he's been able to just put the ball on the floor. We've seen that Penny Hardaway spin, step back, fadeaway move. So his ability to kind of, take that pull up in the mid range. Wiggins is a pretty decent shot creator, and he's fully capable of doing so. Obviously, it takes away from some of the motion offense, so we don't go to it as much. But if like I said, if a possession isn't necessarily, if a possession's breaking down, we can go to Wiggins for a bailout, and he's fully capable of making something happen as a shot creator. And like we mentioned earlier, he can attack mismatches, just creating his shots in the post. Right? We've seen him against Derek White, just or smaller guards like D'Angelo Russell, Tyus Jones in the playoffs, just picking his spots, attacking mismatches, particularly in the post, and creating his own shot out of those plays, which are highly effective. And then also he has some slashing ability, just putting the ball on the floor. That was probably most notable in the NBA Finals. Just his ability to look at the floor, say, there's nobody in front of me that can stop me, and take a few dribbles and get at the basket, right? The signature play on Derek White where he just kind of full head of steam to the basket and just dunks it. And that was one of the big moments of the finals because that's part of his skill set as a slasher, just someone that can put the ball on the floor, use his, frame and wingspan to just, get to the rim with ease, given the matchup, of course. And that provides some rim pressure for us. Now, there are some people in the fan base that wish he'd do some of this stuff a little bit more, attacking downhill, and that's a fair complaint. But again, we have to balance motion offense with shot creation in general. So there is a fine tuning of that we need to find. But he is fully capable of putting the ball on the floor and making something happen in a pinch, or even if somebody's injured for a stretch of time, he's 100% competent at attacking mismatches or getting to the basket at will. And then the final thing I wrote on this slide, because I have a lot more strengths to go on the next slide, is he's a connective passer. And that's kind of reflected in his assists per game, where even though in Minnesota he was averaging around 3 or 4 assists, and that's kind of been cut in half around 2 for the Warriors, I believe coming into the Warriors, he was more of a drive and kick type of playmaker. And I think with having played in our offense and in the system, he's really developed a stronger sense of making connective reads and finding guys who are, moving, whether they're a shooter or a cutter, just kind of 0.5 basketball, moving the ball, not having it stick as much. So he's made definite strides as a connective passer as well, which I think is notable. And then I have a lot more strengths here. So multi-positional, similar to Jonathan Kuminga, right? He can guard.
Can I just add one more thing to the offensive side?
Of course.
So one thing I noticed, and given it was a smaller sample size this year, but we were experimenting a lot more with having him as the pick and roll ball handler. So I am curious to see if that will, continue, as it's something that whether it's the coaching staff or Andrew Wiggins or whatever the motivation was behind it, to see if Wiggins will continue to run more post up, because he was a lot better at it than I thought. And yeah, so just something to keep an eye out for, whether or not that is incorporated more into the offense next year.
Absolutely. No, you're right. In those downhill situations where, you have the screen setter and you get separation, like, he is fully capable at his frame to have the ball in his hands, make the right read, or just attack and make something happen, whether it get to the free throw line or get into that mid-range area. But you're right. That's a good point. We've incorporated him as the pick and roll ball handler more so, especially last season. And like I said, multi-positional, kind of like Jonathan Kuminga, guy that can switch and play multiple positions offensively and defensively, right? He can switch 1 through 3 and guard multiple positions at an elite level. He can play the 2 and the 3 offensively, and he can play some 4 as well, defensively and offensively against certain matchups, in closing lineups in particular, right? When we run that small ball lineup with Steph, Clay, maybe GP2, Wiggins, and Draymond. Wiggins, more times than not, is going to be the 4 in that situation where he needs to rebound the ball, be effective as a defender against 4s, and he has held up in closing lineups in those situations in crunch time on both ends, right? And in those small ball lineups. So Wiggins is kind of more equipped to play that position against matchups than Kuminga is, but he isn't necessarily against every player, right? Like, even a guy like Jaren Jackson, even though Wiggs held up pretty well against him in the playoffs a couple of years ago, Jaren still did a very good job of getting good position, and just his frame being a 6'10 player that's 240 pounds or so, he's just going to be a tougher matchup in a vacuum. But Wiggs has still done an incredible job playing the 4 in his spots when he's needed. So, absolutely. And then you look at his physical tools, right? Being 6'7", 197 pounds. So, obviously, he's not someone that is, going to put his weight on you and try to bully you in the post against comparable wings, or he's going to, back you down and put you in the rim. But he is nimble and agile enough, right? He does have some good size overall, just at 6'7", 7-foot wingspan, right? And his agility, his quickness, his nimbleness off his feet, his foot speed, just being able to stick with players, quickness and length, right? And so that stuff kind of all accumulates to his ability defensively from a screen navigation standpoint, right? When we were in the finals, Draymond basically told Wiggs, or I believe it was Andre Iguodala actually. Iggy told Wiggs, you're giving up switches too easily when you're guarding Jason Tatum. You need to fight over those screens. And Wiggs, you saw after Game 3, was fighting over those screens relentlessly, and he was, slipping right through them, sticking to Tatum, having his, arm on his hip, making those shots tough. But his physical tools give him that ability to navigate those situations quite well. And like I said, his length, a 7-foot wingspan, getting good contest off, making shots difficult. Like, he's done a really great job on LeBron for that reason, right? Maybe he's not as strong as LeBron in terms of upper body, but he is fully capable of making those shots difficult on the perimeter when he has to contest or close out. So definitely has the great capacity to defend for his for the physical reasons he has, and as well as his explosiveness, right? He has incredible bounce. We've known this since high school, right? High school and college, going into the NBA, like, his greatest asset was his ability, just his pop off the ground. Just the ability to just dunk, be an athlete in the air. And as a vertical threat, we've used him in a multitude of situations, right? Just as a lob threat every now and then. coming off of screens, downhill situations, or in transition, right? Just as a vertical option at that wing spot. It's definitely an incredible luxury to have, right? Because not every small forward can be as quick, nimble, and athletic as Andrew Wiggins is. And then I also want to mention he is a team player, and that's a big deal to me, right? And I mentioned this for Kevon Looney as well, a guy that has a willingness to sacrifice, taking a pay cut that he didn't have to, right? He had all the leverage in the world to demand a lucrative contract, and instead he willingly took a pay cut. He sacrificed for the betterment of the team to keep the core together, and as well as sacrifice coming off the bench. We saw last year in the playoffs, he was out for a period of time, came off the bench, sacrificed for others. And, he's not a guy that's going to demand the ball and demand possessions and playing time. He will kind of play his role, embrace it, embrace what's asked and required of him to win the basketball game. He's not picky or particularly high maintenance, right? He's a very low maintenance player. He's not going to complain. He's just going to do his job and leave it all out on the floor. And I have nothing but admiration for a guy like that, right? A few years ago, I didn't have that wider focus, right? I kind of looked at it just production on the court with Andrew Wiggins, but when you look at his intangibles and the things that he does on and off the court, looking at from it from a less narrow-minded standpoint, he is our second best player and our second most important player, and we saw that in the regular season for good reason. You just can't say enough about him. And then the final thing, even though last season was, I believe, an anomaly, I think last season was an exception, not the rule itself. Andrew Wiggins is the epitome of an Iron Man. Durable, reliable, right? Guy that plays games after games after games, high mileage, doesn't really get hurt that often, right? Last season, I feel like was an exception with the adductor strain early in the year, having the family matter that he had to tend to. But even then, him being able to step into the playoffs and play the way he did speaks volumes to his durability and reliability, even more so than his absence. So, again, nothing but, admiration, respect for what he's done for our team and our franchise in such a short span of time. And I believe he deserves his jersey in the rafters when it's all said and done if he continues with this trajectory. Shadow, what's up, man? Do you have
What's
anything
up,
to add to
brother?
your strengths?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it. Andrew Wiggins, 6'7", 200 pounds, 7-foot wingspan. Um, he has a lot of versatility. A lot of people don't speak on his versatility. He could definitively play the 2, the 3, and the 4 without zero problems. He's probably one of the better point of attack defenders in the NBA. Also, he's low maintenance as far as offense is concerned. I've never seen an all-star who doesn't get the ball like he does, or the offense doesn't circulate around him. I feel that Kerr's already spoken to him, and he's gonna add something to that. But like, I think everybody harps on the last year's finals so much that they forget what he did in the playoffs. If you look at the Sacramento series, I think he had multiple games of 4 blocks. Um, I believe Darren Fox, who was Mr. Clutch, and he can get a bucket on anybody, and he was absolutely abusing everybody but Andrew. And Andrew didn't start on those games, and I believe he was like 18 for 48 on Wiggins. I can't do the math on it, but it's somewhere around 37, 38% that he shot on Wiggins. Meanwhile, he was having his way with everybody else, shooting in the high 50s, low 60s on everybody else. Um, Also, outside of Game 6 with LeBron, Wiggins had Bron shooting about 37%, and up until
Oh, you cut out there,
he
Shadow, a
got
little
like 8 field
bit.
goals on him. I think he finished 50%, 16 for 37 straight field goals on
Yeah.
Wiggins when Wiggins' ribs were broken and he was backing him down in the post, and they were doing it on purpose. So outside of those things, he was doing it. I believe Keegan Murray shot like 3 for 10 on him. These are just numbers off of my head because obviously Wiggins is my guy, so I do deep dives, not just when I'm doing these case studies like you soliloquy like I've done, but throughout the year. I still feel He was put. And another thing Wiggins does, and people don't speak about it more. Um, our team was out of position a lot, and Andrew Wiggins covers up so many holes. So I would damn near call him the plumber because he's always patching up holes and fixing people's mistakes. If you look and watch the film, Wiggins will be on one side, Jordan Poole's man will be on the other side, and Wiggins would be closing out. So speaking of the closeout, I believe at one particular point of the season, he was leading the entire NBA in contested threes. But obviously, he got hurt. He missed 45 games, so that lead um, eviscerated. Also, the first 22 games, I believe, of the season, I think he had like 36, eight threes. Before
Yep,
he
yep.
he got hurt, he was shooting 19. I think 19-5, no, 19-6 and 4, on like fucking 66% true shooting, and 45.5% from three. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think his trajectory was absolutely crazy. He was definitively playing the second best on his team. I believe he was like a 1B. Obviously, Steph was scoring more, and obviously Steph is in a different stratosphere to Wiggins, but how he was playing and his ability to make the shot and defend was crazy. Then the abductor, he had a stretch of 10 games where he just wasn't himself. He just wasn't scoring. He was barely cracking double digits, and that's because he came back early. Because if you look and understand, I think we were like 7 for 9 during that stretch, and Wiggins just couldn't take it anymore. He just said, I'm coming back. Like, we're just getting killed out here." And then everybody else was like, "Yo, we need Wiggins," blah 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 blah. But he got off to a slow start. Once he started getting in his bag, he had another stellar game. And then he ended up missing.
That was, I think, against Washington, right?
Yeah, but he went crazy on Washington. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
But let me say this, right? Because I love the breakdown of last season, but to me, last season was so unstable that I'm willing to just throw that away for every player, right? Draymond, Poole, Wiggs, everyone, like, that doesn't represent anything to me. But what I will say is, can you provide a little bit of background on Wiggins, just overall as a player, as a person, like kind of who he is, and also his mentality shift being from Minnesota and then going to the Warriors, like kind of his background
Yeah,
information.
well, in Minnesota, he wasn't necessarily happy. He didn't mind being the guy, but the scrutiny for a guy who didn't have the comparable pieces, because everybody was relying on him so much to do things that were out of his role. Like, as you said, the 4 assists. They wanted him to be a playmaker. They wanted him to score. They wanted him to defend. They wanted him to rebound. They wanted him to be a highlight reel and be the franchise player and put asses in the seats. There was just like so many things, and they didn't have the stability. I think he ran through like four coaches in 6 years or so, or in 6 seasons, or 6 or 7 seasons. So at the end of the day, the stability wasn't there. The franchise isn't a very good franchise, as you could see. Everybody who leaves, from Zach Levine to like probably
Jimmy Butler.
yeah, Jimmy Butler, like everybody who left went on to flap their wings and do their thing. So you could tell that it's due to the fact of the organization. That just wasn't structure in that organization, and Wiggins didn't have the ability, and nobody was listening too. Also, he couldn't be a leader because everybody's just doing buffoonery. Jimmy Butler's smashing fucking Cat's fiance, laughing at the GM, doing like there was no respect or no structure, and they didn't have no culture. Once he came to the Golden State Warriors, there was a culture, and he had some people to actually look up to and ask questions and get feedbacks. An integral part where people don't always forget, is in a young player. The reason why young players become so great is because they usually have vets in place to let them fly. People forget Steph had multiple injuries from '09 to 2011 going into 2012, and a vet that he leaned on was Jared Jack. Taught him how to be a professional, taught him about the position, taught him different things about the NBA, which then in turn translated into who Steph is today. Just show it is on the court, have some showmanship, but at the same token have sportsmanship as well. And he passed on those gems and those lessons on to Andrew Wiggins because his demeanor. If you look in Minnesota, when he smiled in a picture, it wasn't very often. But in the Warriors, he was smiling, he was joyful because he was happy inside. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like he was grateful for Minnesota drafting him number one. But then the owner brings him to the room, like, am I going to give you this money? Are you going to be the type of player? And I think the scrutiny on Andrew Wiggins wasn't fucking warranted. We're talking about multiple seasons of over 23 points a game. Like, okay, he didn't score 28, 29. Did he have a fucking great coach? Thibs was playing the man fucking 39 minutes a game, running him to the ground, bro. Like, at the end of the day, it's not like he had the type of coach that knows about developing young guys and being with young guys. Thibs' number one knock is he doesn't work well with young players. You understand what I'm saying? And that was his coach for a little bit of tenure. Flip Saunders, which is a great guy, but he was getting to his latter years, damn near 70 years old, so he couldn't connect with the young guys to do what he needed to do. So with that being said, like Wiggins was very happy to come to the Warriors. Like there's tweets I knew about the proposed situation for like 6 months. It wasn't like the Warriors woke up yesterday and said, "Okay, yeah, like Wiggins." When they saw the season going like that, it was like right away. And even in the summer, they had interest simply knowing from how his contract was and everything like that. It would slot in. If you guys remember when the D'Lo thing happened, they signed D'Lo to bump up his salary to match Wiggins, so Wiggins could then in turn come over here. And then that situation ended up getting KD over, and then we ended up getting the Kaminga pick from Minnesota, and then it turned into who we are today. But as far as Wiggins is concerned, he's focused on being a super professional. At the end of the day, seems like he's been in the league for a long time. He just turned 28 this year. You understand what I'm saying? He's still got a good 5, 6, 7 years of elite basketball left easily. You understand what I'm saying? So I feel that this season, the beginning of 2022 showed me the type of player that Andrew Wiggins could be next year.
Mm-hmm.
Super efficient, super athletic, super spry, and I think that Chris Paul is going to put him in better positions than Jordan Poole running with the second unit
Mm-hmm.
and doing all that. And another thing we got to remember last season when Andrew Wiggins and Draymond went into the second unit, they went from like the 29th
Yes.
bench to the fourth best bench in the NBA. So that definitely helped, and Wiggins works well in the second unit, and his rotation works well. But the year was really sporadic, and Kerr was trying to figure out so many different things. He was playing Lamb, like Wiggins was out there playing with Lamb and doing all these things, and it was an up and down season. He get his best friend on the team, which is Jordan Poole, gets punched in the face, and it started off
Right.
really rocky. But he navigated. He did what he needed to do. You
Can I
you
ask you?
mentioned.
Can I ask you one thing about just if you can expand on his personality type and demeanor, like how he approaches the game? Because I think there was this misconception, and I'm guilty of this too. When he was first traded, and there were obviously signs that we were losing games,
Mhm,
or maybe not losing games, but we weren't winning games to in 2021 to the
mhm.
extent we'd hoped. And obviously there was a lot of pressure on him being the number two.
Yeah,
So people kind of uh, stuck with these narratives about him
yeah.
about like low
Yeah, but
motor,
I would
all that
say
stuff.
me knowing NBA players. There's probably close to 500 NBA players, including like a couple of the two-way guys that play on teams.
Hmm.
There are players that are really good at basketball, but happen to play basketball, and then there's the guys that are basketball. Like you understand what I'm saying? There's a difference. There's like it ain't all about basketball for like 97% of the league. Then there's
Hmm.
the 3% that are basketball and that grew up in basketball that had like coaches' sons or parents were athletes and thing. You have to talk about Andrew Wiggins' mother was a two-time silver medalist at the Olympic Games. His father played with Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying, and played on the Houston Rockets with Akeem and multiple and so his whole life has been basketball since like the age of 5. So he actually loves basketball and passionate about basketball and wouldn't do anything else. There was no other job for him when he was 6 years old. He knew he wanted to be in the NBA. So that narrative is kind of wishy washy for me. Me knowing multiple guys. I would say there's probably like three guys on our team that are basketball. You understand what I'm saying? Like Draymond is really good at basketball, but he's not. Everything ain't about basketball for him. Steph, everything's about basketball for him. You understand what I'm saying? Wiggins, everything's about basketball for him. Clay, if Clay could be on a boat if he wanted to, like he loves it, and obviously he's his father played in it, and but I'm just speaking on like personality, people's passion for it, and on top of it, Clay didn't have the pressure in high school and college because nobody thought that he was actually going to be an NBA player outside of Clay and his boys. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you look at the Clay story, he didn't get no offers from the schools he wanted to go to, like Oregon, which he spent time in Portland and is from Portland. He didn't get to go to UCLA, which was like a huge inspiration to him being a Southern California kid. He didn't get to go to UCLA. So the only school that kind of wanted him was Washington State. So he's like, yo, I'm going to be a Cougar. Let me go do my thing. And as you can see, he wasn't the most focused. You know, it's funny now when you look back at it, Clay, you know, he was smoking weed, got caught, you know, almost affected his draft stock because they didn't know what type of guy he was. Was he serious? Was he focused on basketball? And at the end of the day, Andrew Wiggins is totally opposite about that. He goes home, he's family, but when it comes to time in the gym, working out, doing what he needs to do, he's focused on basketball, and he's been in the whole basketball domain for his entire life. At 13, he was on the cadet team, the junior national team, and the cadet team. He started playing for Team Canada at age 13. You understand what I'm saying? So there's always been pressure. It's not like Andrew Wiggins. Look, if you look at there's a YouTube video has a couple million views and it says number one 13-year-old in the world. You know what I mean? At that time, the man's in the seventh grade, bro, and he's has millions. Like people knew he was going to the league at when he was in the seventh grade. You understand what I'm saying? So as far as the pressure and as far as all those things, obviously it wasn't like LeBron because he's from Canada, and there is a thing. But once he touched American soil in the fucking ninth grade, it was over. Like he was on ESPN games. He was having games. 5,000 people were coming to the games. Um, Games that he was playing in for instead of being free, it was $10 at the door, $15 at the door, and the shit was sold out. Sold out. Games that they sold tickets in advance. There was one game Wiggins had scalpers were selling tickets for $250 and people were paying. So he had a different type of like trajectory, and I see why people said, "Oh, like the LeBron thing." But LeBron had a lot of like factors going in too. He was comfortable. He was playing in Cleveland, where he's from. Like imagine Wiggins in Toronto. Like this shit would have been like comfortable for him. He can go home, go to his bed. His friends are there. He could push, and he's not a person to get distracted. I'm just not saying LeBron wouldn't have ended up being who he is, but landing where you are matters. That matters. Like um, Steph being on the Golden State Warriors and coming to the team when they're like won 29 games, were one of the worst teams in the league, and were a laughing stock. And he only had guys like AC Law and Monte Ellis to beat out. You know what I'm saying? It's like it made him into that type of person. But Wiggins' whole demeanor and everything is about basketball. He's probably one of the most passionate guys, but he's like Steph. He doesn't speak. He does it on the court. So as you could see in 2022 when he was dunking, he was screaming, he was calling fucking the other Canadian on well, I just forgot his name.
Was it? Oh, it was Brendan Clark.
Yeah, Brandon Clark.
Brandon Clark.
Yeah. Clark
Yeah.
from he's from British Columbia, Vancouver, BC. Like he's kind of like near close to where Steve Nash is from. So he knew him for a long time, and those guys were chirping. You know, Memphis was chirping. Dylan Brooks and brought a culture of like braggadocious, chip on your shoulder, us against the world. That's where the whole thing with Iggy. So even Wiggins went in there with that mindset, like yo, how they were talking about Iggy and doing Iggy like that and chirping at Iggy because Iggy's not playing. He's in his older stature. He say, yeah, you're a bum. That's why we didn't want you and blah, blah, blah. Wiggins like, yeah, okay, I got something for you. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why he played and did what he needed to do. Like, I'm personally telling you guys, what you guys saw in 2022 was probably 65% of Andrew Wiggins' capabilities. Like, you guys haven't seen nothing until he gets the Jordan Poole green
So,
light
so I'll be
or the
honest.
Klay
Like,
Thompson green light. Like you guys have not seen the Andrew Wiggins you think you guys have seen, but you guys
agree.
look in any game that Steph and other people don't play, Andrew Wiggins will have like in the Toronto game or the Detroit game or any game that he's playing by himself or Phoenix where he had 40 or whatever. Any game where he's playing by himself, where he does his thing and he gets touches over like 18, 19, 20 shots a game, Wiggins is like 27, 28, 29 plus every game. It's not like, but he's comfortable with taking the back seat and saying, you know what, I'll rebound, I'll run the floor. If I get the ball, I get the ball. If I get plays run, I get played run. He's not going to go out there and go get it. Like, and you know what I mean? Pool's more of, and there's nothing wrong with the way Poole was doing. He's more aggressive. Like, fuck that. I'm taking this shot right now. I'm about to get subbed out. Let me fucking fuck fouling anybody. Let me take 4 shots before I go sit down. Wiggins doesn't have that type of mentality. So as far as
But
his
I will say this: I don't want it to get lost before I get into the weaknesses. But just to put a bow on this, I think my biggest takeaway, and he's been here for 3 years, right? 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, you could
yep,
say 4 years, 4 years.
going
My
on
biggest
sport. Yeah.
takeaway is his competitive nature, because a guy that really isn't used offensively as much as he should be, a guy that isn't necessarily as vocal from a demanding and maintenance standpoint, and still yet commits defensively and really gets his hands dirty on the glass, like rebounding the basketball and doing the small things to help win, which end up being big, right? The small things that end up being big. That is a guy that's like, that's what we thought Draymond had. Like, that's what Draymond's reputation has
Yeah.
been for years, is the dude that does like all the other stuff, that does, maybe he's not a scorer, but Wiggins is even a better scorer than that. So like, his competitive nature, because there's so many guys in the NBA that if they were standing in the corner, they weren't getting the ball, they weren't getting their touches or possessions or shot attempts, they would just be sulking and dejected and, pouting. But he has, like you said, he just goes and gets it. And if that means he has to offensive rebound because he's not getting offensive possessions, then he will go and try to get second chance points. If that means he has to create havoc defensively to try to create extra possessions so he can, play in transition, or he can just, help the team win from a defensive standpoint, rebound the ball, make the right plays. Like, he doesn't ever hijack the offense. He always plays the right way, plays the game how it's supposed to. So he's extremely selfless and a team player. Like, and I can't say enough about a guy like that who has such a big role in our team, right? Because if you have a big role and you're selfish, that can really hurt a team. But he has a pretty big role, but he's selfless, which is
Hey
really,
Dre,
yeah.
do you believe in body language? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
can you like see somebody's body language and their demeanor, and it's almost like you can tell the type of personality that they are?
Yeah. There's definitely indications, 100%. There's definitely
Okay,
indication.
before I knew Shadow, before I knew Shadow, and I had any type of insight into Wiggins or anything like that, right? Like when I watched him play like the first couple of games. So the first game that I watched Wiggins was when he was in Phoenix. And I was like right up there, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like observing him. And I saw like the whole body language and his demeanor and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Not like really everything that Shadow said or has said over the years about Wiggins, when you look at him and you talk to him, right? And you see people like talk to him and all of that. Just by the way he interacts with people, right? Like you get the sense that he's like a laid back dude. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying like he's the perfect small forward, right? Like Kevin Durant's better. There's a couple of guys that's better than him, right? But here's the thing. We don't necessarily need somebody that's better. Like at some point in basketball, it comes down to personalities, right? It comes down to a guy that's going to fit. You know what I'm saying? Kevin Durant fit. But the personality stuff, it was like, oh my God, this is a friggin' headache. You know what I'm saying? And I think at a certain point, personalities clash and all of that, and it's gonna matter. You know what I'm saying? Like KD was the perfect basketball player. But guess what? He could not fucking stay off the timeline. You know what I'm saying? Like he could not get over whatever he needed to like get over. You know what I'm saying? And it ruined the team and it ruined championships, right? I saw Andrew Wiggins come in, bro, and I saw you could see what his personality is. You know what I'm saying? laid back, family man, and plays with his kids, plays with the dogs, go home, and that's it. You know what I'm
He'll never impose
saying?
like
Not even in the. I don't even think he's in the clubs like that. You know what I'm saying?
right,
And
yeah,
and then when you get to it, bro, then you have like some high ego, high personality guys on the team. You know what I'm saying?
right.
He's probably more talented than all of those guys. But
Oh yeah,
sometimes you just need to just like lay back and just let those big personalities be the big
right,
personalities,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
So you saw all of what was happening in the championship season,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fan base was down on him, this and that and the other. Some people don't actually watch basketball. They just go by a player's demeanor and him being loud. Look at Russell Westbrook, bro. People think that Russell Westbrook is a great basketball player, right? He's not a he's a good basketball. He's not a great basketball player. And the reason why people got fooled into Russ for years is because Russ beats his chest and does this and does that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Wiggins is not that. But if you ask anyone who is a more or who has a higher impact in a championship context, it's Andrew Wiggins.
100%.
Fuck the box score, fuck all of that. But when it comes to playing two-way basketball and doing things in terms of a championship context, Andrew, bro, I seen it from day one, bro. Like from day one, I saw it, and I was sick and tired of like the KD drama and this, that, and the other, bro. And I just needed somebody to fit. We were on this dude's ass for years, right? Like we should trade him, do this, do that. And I was one of the dudes that was like, fuck it, nah.
Yep.
I think he should stay because he's a great fit personality and he's a
Yes.
monster athlete, right?
Yes.
And he has a bag to him too. So when we started off the season or whatever, and he was doing great, nobody said shit because they were fucking wrong. Mid-year,
They
he
said
goes
wait
through
to
a
the
little
playoffs.
slump.
They said wait to the playoffs. That's what they
Wait
said.
till the playoffs, bro. The man was literally the second best player in the playoffs,
Yeah. Yep.
right? So, and you know why we were so right? Because we were analyzing everything holistically, right? We weren't analyzing, oh, he got a layup and the shit just skimmed off of the rim on a layup. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
he muffed the layup and all of that shit, bro. Like we know how talented,
They were
how
killing him. Remember
athletic
that
he is.
Kings game? That Kings game. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
bro.
exactly right.
So you can't analyze people in that segment. You have to analyze them by what the need is. This man was in a conference finals, and he gave Luka hell. Jason Tatum, he gave Jason Tatum hell. And
Yep.
that man had just all of Jason Tatum. Bro, you know how important he was in terms of the championship? Bro, I call Shadow after that game 5, bro. I think Shadow was tearing up, dog. I shit you not. I don't mean to put Shadow on blast, but I think Shadow was tearing up. I swear to God. That's how proud we were, bro. And it's almost like when we talk about, like homemade guys, drafted guys or whatever, it feels like he's a drafted guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a good
that
point.
season, I put out a tweet and I put Andrew Wiggins' box score with Tatum and Browns. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, these dudes have touches. This guy doesn't have the touches.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Right? And I put out that tweet and people looked at me like I was fucking nuts. Next thing you know, turn around, the man had like 26 and 14 in the most important game in the final.
And mind you, in those
Right?
matchups.
So
Yep.
yeah, bro. So
No, but
I
I was
mean,
gonna say, like in those matchups, right?
yeah.
Like Tatum shot sub 40% when he was guarded by Wiggins. Jaylen Brown shot sub 20% when he was guarded by Wiggins.
Dre, do you know how important it is when you can just say, single guy, right? I'm going to give you this assignment and no one is going to help you. Everyone is going to stay at home.
Yes.
You know how that can fuck up a dribble drive offense, bro?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It's not a coincidence that Tatum and Brown, after like the first game, their numbers plummeted because what did they do? They just funneled them into the help every time because nobody was over helping because Andrew Wiggins was there.
Yes.
And it's funny because there's a lot of people that still doesn't give the man due. You know how fucking important that was, bro?
Absolutely.
That you can put, bro, Andre Iguodala won Finals MVP playing playing worse than Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah,
Think about that.
that's true. Yeah. Yep. Against a worse team.
Right? So
Yeah.
the man was a monster in the finals, like absolute monster. And the funny part is, didn't even shoot the ball well.
Yeah.
Didn't
I
even
mean,
shoot the ball well.
yeah. Yep. He's a playoff riser. I mean, in the traditional sense,
Dre,
people view it
when
as
the
like,
cap rises, we are
oh,
going to look at that contract like the best value contract in the league. A
yep.
year ago, we were looking at his contract like he was overpaid. If you
Oh,
gave him the same money today, right? This is the funny thing about perception. You know what I'm saying? Because people say perception is sometimes truth. If you gave him the money that he was making last season, it's a bargain.
it's still a bargain. Yep. Yep.
That is the funny thing about perception and relativity, right? And that is what I was saying this entire time. I'm like, the dude is 6'8", long arms, and he's probably top 5 athletes in the league.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So this is what we have with him. Would I like him to be a better playmaker? Absolutely. Would I like him to be a better free throw shooter? Would I like him to put the ball on the floor, pick his spots more? All of that, sure. But guess what? Those things take touches, and what he is doing in terms of his role right now is absolutely amazing.
100% agree.
And let me tell you this. We did not stand a chance when he got hurt. That's how important he was.
I agree.
We didn't stand a chance, bro. You know, like, bro, I felt bad for Shadow last season because he was fighting for his fucking life, dog. Like he was on the timeline fighting for his life, and
Man,
bro, fighting for his life. So it's 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 just funny that this man went from everybody, damn near everybody on the team wanting to trade him, to where he's like the best value contract on the team. Bro, the league is about wings, and I just hope Kaminga does something similar what Andrew Wiggins is doing. If Kaminga does
Yes.
say
Yes.
70% of what Wiggins does, they are going to punch people in the mouth in the playoffs.
So when I was building this presentation, it felt like I was almost like describing an upgraded version of Kaminga in a way. Like a lot of the strengths were very similar. A lot of some of the weaknesses were kind of the same. Like Wiggins and Kaminga, it actually did not hit me until I was doing this entire presentation and breaking it down to on a granular level as to how similar they are even right now, right? Like just from a pure strengths weaknesses standpoint and even expectations, like they
Yeah.
are very comparable. And like you said, if Kaminga can just be like a fraction of what Wiggins is, from whether it's 40, 50, 60%, something like that, I mean, that would be huge. I mean, even last season he was probably like 25%, but if he can bump that up a little bit more, then I think that would go a long way for us, because we don't really need much else other than a wing that can just defend, rebound, and score in pockets. So if Kaminga can kind of take that step, 100%.
Yeah, because I a lot of people were saying, trade Siakam, trade Wiggins and all of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Trade Brad Beal. I'm like, so you want to trade a guard for a wing? Like, are you kidding me? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right? So
you're right.
bro, I'm telling you, when it comes down to it, we're gonna see what he's gonna do against the elites. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's done an amazing job. And
It didn't really hit me how short-sighted I was in 2021, because I did want to trade for Brad Beal, and I was looking at what Brooklyn had, right? Brooklyn had KD, Harden,
yeah,
Kyrie, and I was like, you know what? We can have Steph, Clay, Beal, and kind of build around, the guards that way. But you know what? That was always short-sighted because, and you kind of, opened up that narrow mindset a bit, and you were kind of explaining how Wiggins' value goes beyond, or value in general goes beyond scoring the ball at a particular volume or clip. Like just rebounding, defending, being a fit, just a positional fit, a guy that's can provide rim pressure and athleticism, like those guys. And so then I was like, you know what? We got to give it a chance. We got to see how this looks, because That season before, he was the second option, and
So
Wiggins.
here's the thing about that, Dre.
Yeah,
I've watched probably, I'm gonna say, like 30 years of basketball, right? As
yeah.
crazy as that sounds, as I'm looking at my gray hairs, like I've watched a lot of fucking basketball, and I've seen basketball evolve and and change, and it's almost like it ran through cycles. You know what I'm saying? Like in one sense, basketball was up tempo, then it became a steel cage match, then it became up tempo, then it became a steel cage match again. You know what I'm saying? And the thing that I saw, and the kind of like hearing like how they were gonna start to referee the game or whatever, right? I saw what was gonna happen. So in the regular season, they want a track meet, right? And then in the playoffs, it starts to tighten up, and you can actually put your hands on people. Like, Drake, we should do like if we ever get big enough, bro, we should start to like send people to games that's never really been to like high level games before,
100%.
because I feel like you need to be at games and actually be up front, up close, and see like how physical it is. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it gets to the playoffs, bro. When I tell you, like, when somebody's coming off of a screen, say Steph is coming off of a screen, you're not seeing like the holding. You're not seeing like the
Oh yeah,
elbows.
oh yeah.
Bro, sometimes they're even throwing fucking punches. You know
The
what I'm saying?
bumps,
And
the grabs, the
the
pulls.
bumps,
Yep.
right? Like you're not seeing like a lot of that stuff, bro. And when it gets to the playoff, that's what happens. And people are talking about Kyrie and KD and all of this stuff and Harden, right? But once that shit goes, it slows down a little and it starts to get real physical and it starts to become like a wrestling match damn near. That's where like a lot of these heavy ball handlers, they're just not going to thrive. You know what I'm saying? You get to the playoffs now. This is where you need somebody like Wiggins, the switching and all of that.
Yep.
I finally went back and I watched the Klay Thompson interview, right? And one of the things that stuck out to me was when Klay said, or Paul George was bringing up the 60-point game or whatever, right? And he was like, we had two small guards. Here it is, Andre. He said we had two small guards in the backcourt, right? I think it was
Mm-hmm.
Monte Ellis and somebody else. I don't remember who else was in
Yeah.
the backcourt. And he was like, they had certain rules with switching. You know what I'm saying? So you couldn't switch Monte Ellis on the KD. You know what I'm
No, it
saying?
was
Like you kind of.
George Hill. It was George Hill.
Oh yeah, George Hill.
Right.
So they he was like, now it's a lot of switching concepts. You know what I'm saying? So now to those interchanges, you switch everything basically, right? And to switch everything, you need the personnel to switch everything. And
Right.
Paul George was saying like, yeah, he was on KD and all this other stuff, and he was like, bro, we just weren't equipped to have that. And he's like, yeah, bro, you can't have two small guards in there. And I was like, that's the Andrew Wiggins thing. That's the Kuminga thing. And you want to know why we lost in the playoffs? We had three guards on the court.
It's true.
You know what I'm saying?
No, you're right.
We had three guards on the court. So we were trying to balance between the shooting and the defense. And this is why Steph is so great, because he can augment that non-shooting. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that's what it's going to come down to, bro. Like when people say, "Oh, we need a center, this and that," but like shooting, like sometimes you can run the offense in a way where we're going to be good. Next season, people are talking about like 60 games, this, that, and the other. We just need to get there healthy. They need to develop good habits,
Yes.
good
Yes.
defensive habits, and they also need to get there healthy. So that's the balance that they're going to have to strike. And I think Wiggins is going to be a big part of striking that balance. And Kuminga.
100%.
Did you do
All right.
Kuminga's profile yet?
I did. I
Okay.
uploaded it a little like 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was actually very similar to Wiggins. I know you have a playback scheduled, so I'm just gonna try to get this done within the next 10-ish minutes. But absolutely, like every point you nailed it. And so just the weaknesses, right? And I want to hit on some
Yeah.
weaknesses, expectations, and then we'll kind of close this out with the player projection. So with weaknesses, right, Wiggins, I don't view him as like a floor spacer when the playoffs come around, right? He's about 32% on 5 attempts the last 2 playoff runs. And it's not a testament to his inability to hit perimeter shots because we know he can, but it's more so the fact that teams are just more willing to leave him open, knowing the alternative is Steph or Clay knocking shots down at the clip that they do. So if Wiggins obviously had the respect that Steph, Clay, an elite shooter does have, then that would even create more space on the court. But even 32% isn't that bad given, the attempts aren't too high. And he's hit some big ones when they mattered. He hit a big one against Denver a couple of years ago. He had against Boston. He was, obviously didn't shoot the ball entirely well that series, but there was a few games where he knocked a couple down. So he's capable of knocking shots down, but he's not a pure floor spacer in the traditional sense of that word. He also has a bit of a loose handle, which kind of results in a limited shot creation, right? Like even though he's capable of creating his own shot, he struggles to put the ball on the floor consistently and create his own shot, in a variety of ways. So he kind of lives in the mid range, and it's not like he has the deepest bag, or at least to my knowledge. But Shadow might have a different perspective on that because he kind of knows more intimately what Wiggins' abilities are. But from what I've seen, I do think his shot creation is a little bit more limited, and that might be a function of not being involved as much in the offense too. Like we've seen him pull out that Penny Hardaway spin dribble, step back jumper, and so that's definitely a move that he's brought out the bag at times. But his handle, if it was a little bit tighter, I think it could help with getting to his spots much easier and being more effective in shot creation opportunities. Obviously, we mentioned earlier with the poor free throw shooting in the mid 60s for his career. But for the last couple of seasons, low 60s. The idea is if he can just be around the high 60s or low 70s, that would be acceptable. But it's a flaw, right? Every player has their flaws, and for Wiggs, I think the biggest one is probably just knocking free throws down at like a decent level, like around 75-80%. But you take the good with the bad because there's a lot more good that comes with him. And then the final thing is, and this applies so less to him, but more so to the system we run and the schemes that we've implemented offensively, that at times it may appear as if he's passive, right? He'll kind of fade away from the offense or fade out of, the plays on a consecutive possession basis. But that's more so a result of having multiple guys that get shots off on the court that demand possessions and touches, like Steph, like Clay, last year Jordan Poole. So at times he may not be as involved, and that's more so a function of the motion offense, but also stylistically the types of players that we have on the court. So the idea is to get him more involved and more engaged on the offensive end. And then just for expectations, I expect him to have a consistent starting role in minutes like he always has, right? He'll be the starting small forward. He'll be a steady force for our team. Always been steady, even if it doesn't mean he's giving us 20 points a game. If his points are a little bit lower, his rebounds and defensive effort will be higher, right? So he's always going to be steady to some extent, giving us some points, giving us a couple of rebounds, and really high-level defense. And then as well, I believe he'll be featured in the offense just in general. He's always been included and incorporated to some extent. The hope is that it's to a greater degree. And then a couple more things. Defensive versatility, right? We all have spoken on his ability to just guard multiple positions, 1 through 3, some 4s, point of attack primarily, on the perimeter, sliding his feet, being a pest, being a hound, using his length, sliding his feet, navigating screens, just being elite as a point of attack defender at such a high level with how he performs that particular role defensively at. So he'll be among the best next season, I have no doubt. He's in his late 20s, so he's starting to peak as a basketball player. And then even a wing stopper, right? We've seen him on the likes of Luka and LeBron, Jason Tatum. We've seen him guard guys like Devin Booker. So he can guard these wings, these swing men that can score the ball in a variety of ways. Paul George, right? Kawhi. We've seen him guard some of the elite shot creating wings in the NBA as well. And then finally, just be active on the boards. In his Warriors career, he hasn't been more active during any stretch of his career than with the Warriors, right? And he's really taken a step on the glass and being an active rebounder, putting a body, boxing out, hustling, diving for loose balls, just being a guy that leaves it all out on the floor consistently. And that's reflected in his ability to rebound, the conscious effort that he puts into it. So I expect that to continue next year and possibly even improve. And then finally, my player projection, just quickly going to get into my predictions statistically for Wiggs. So I have him at around 32 minutes per game, around 17 and a half points, 5 or so rebounds, 2 assists, about a steal, a little bit less than a block, on 47% from the field, a touch under 39 from 3, and about 68% from the line. So comparable numbers to last year from a production standpoint, but I do believe he'll be more efficient and effective uh, with maybe a little bit more volume. So last season he shot a little bit better, but I think from a shot creation standpoint, we may see him more featured is what I'm saying, right? So while his percentages may go down, I'm saying he'll be more effective from a volume standpoint because I believe his volume is actually going to increase this season and his percentages will suffer very negligibly, right? Very, very slight decrease there. So hopefully I have him, bumping up points per game, and I also have his rebounds going up a little bit. But everything kind of remains around his normal output. And then I have his free throw percentage being a little bit higher in the high 60s, which is my hope. And then his plus minus, I have it plus 254. Just a really solid player that's just going to be a walking positive next season, given his defensive rebounding efforts as well as his scoring punch that he provides, 15 plus points per game consistently. Steady Eddie is what I call him. Like, you know what you're getting from him every night. He's going to be a steady hand, a steady player for us on both ends. So you can't really complain about Andrew Wiggins, not only last season, but for his entire Warriors career. He's been the epitome of consistent and reliable for us. So I can't really say enough about him. And it goes beyond his production on the court, even off the court, just a guy that's taken a pay cut, that has sacrificed for others to, get them their shot attempts or possessions. Not a complainer, not a guy that's going to, pout on the bench. He's going to put more effort into other areas of the game, right? Even if he's not getting the possessions he wants offensively, he'll make it up on the defensive end and put even more focus on the other parts of basketball. So that right there is the epitome of a winning basketball player, a guy that is unselfish and has a team first mentality. So, like I said earlier, my hope is that one day his jersey's hung in the rafters because with his trajectory and the culture fit that he is, right? He embodies everything that it means that Steph has set the standard of what it means to be a Warrior, and Andrew Wiggins has embodied that more than, very few players have. So that's it. That's kind of my rundown, and I appreciate everybody again coming through. This was pretty extensive, pretty detailed. And tomorrow we're going to do Clay, then Draymond, then Steph. So we got the core 3 left, and then Steve Kerr after that. But this was a very good discussion and very good insights. So appreciate everybody for contributing in the chat, on stage, of course. And I believe Urkel is going to start a playback room now, so we'll all head over there so we can tap in. All right? Appreciate y'all. Peace out.